This is a recording that I'm not doing live to catch up for the last week when I was away. So the last shit that we did, which is on Friday, we finished on Chav Tes Amud Aleph at the two dots, 4 or 5 lines from the bottom. Today we're going to focus on Chav Tes Amud Beis. It says the Margufa Amar Rav Tanchum Amar Rav Asi. So Rav Tanchum says the name of Rav Asi, Tov lehisker geras kishomim mitchas hamesim. Someone forgot to say Masha Baruch in Tchias HaMesim, so Machzir so then he goes back to Tchias HaMesim in order to say Masha Baruch. She'elu v'verchas hashanim, but if you forgot the same Talamoto Levracha in Machzir Oisai, then you don't make him go back to Baruch Aleinu b'nei sheyachol omer b'shemei tefillah, because he's able to say it in Shemei Tefillah. V'avdallah b'chenin hadas, and with regards to saying Havdalah, after Chanantanu in Chanan Hadas, Ein Machzirin Oiser. We do not make him go back. Why? Because he's able to say it by Havdalah itself. So for the Gemara Meisvei, ask you a question. Tov lehisker geras geshamit chasa mesim. If someone forgot to say Mashiv Aruach during Tchias HaMesim, so the halach is Machzir Noisai. Then we make him go back. But She'el Verchas Hashanim, if somebody forgot to say Talamat of the Vracha, Machzir Noisai. We make him go back. We don't say about saying in the Shemei Tefillah. V'avdol b'chan hadas, say Machzir Noisai, Mnesh Yachal Amar La Kais. And Avdol b'chan hadas doesn't have to go back. He can say that on the Kais. So you see a stira. Here it sounds like we're saying Talamat of the Vracha, you have to go back to Baruch Aleinu. And before, we said we're saying Talamat al-Rafi, you don't have to go back because you could say it in Shemei Tefillah. So the Moshe says, Loi Kasha, this is not a question. Habi Yachad, Habi Tzibor, it's the difference between a Yachad and a Tzibor. What's the difference? The difference is that by a Tzibor, since you can rely on the Tzibor, so therefore you do not have to go back. Tevasen Talamat, says the more Tzibor, my time Maloi, Risham Nisham Mashiach Tzibor. The reason that by Tzibor you don't have to go back is because you're going to hear about a Shliach Tzibor. So then I don't understand, says the more if you go and look in the Brisa carefully, it says the reason that you don't have to go back to Baruch Aleinu is not because you're going to hear what the Shliach Tzibor. It says the reason you don't have to go back is because you're going to say it in Shemei Tefillah. So it's the Brisa is saying it for the wrong reason. If the reason that you don't have to go back to Baruch Aleinu is because of the Tzibor, that you're going to hear it from the Shliach Tzibor, then I should say that. Then they should have said that the reason that you don't have to go back is because you're going to hear from the Shliach Tzibur. Instead, the reason it says you don't have to go back is because it's going to say in the Shemei Tefillah. So it has nothing to do with between a Yachid and a Tzibur. They're both talking about a situation of a Yachid. So they're both talking about a situation of Yachid. Then why do you say that you have to go back in one, and the other one say you don't have to go back? We turn the page and if you remembered before Shemei Tefillah, so you don't have to go back to Baruch Aleinu, you can say in Shemei Tefillah. But if you forgot, right, to say it before Shemei Tefillah, so then we're going to make you go back all the way, seemingly back to Baruch Aleinu. At least that's how we are going to explain it right now. We'll have to see. We'll get now to discuss the Taisus. So Taisus says, "Hada'at gebasa Shemei Tefillah." But if you remembered to say it after Shemei Tefillah, meaning that you didn't say it before Shemei Tefillah, when you could just say it in Shemei Tefillah, you remembered after Shemei Tefillah. So the simple reading of the Gemara was, if you remembered after Shemei Tefillah, it's mashing you have to go back to Baruch Aleinu. So Taisus explains. Top Taisus and Chav Tes Amud Beis. Hada'at gebasa Shemei Tefillah. Taisus says, "Az vaday machzirin oiseh." Then we for sure make him go back. Well, go back to where? Miu says Taisus, but if he did not yet take 3 steps back, he doesn't have to go back to the beginning of Shemana Esrei. He doesn't have to go back to Baruch Aleinu. El Chayzel Shemei Tefillah. He only has to go back to Shemei Tefillah. The what do you call the brisa that we had just had, the brisa says Tov lehisker geras kishom tchias hamesim machzirin asay, and the assumption was machzirin asay to tchias hamesim shel v'rechas hashanim ein machzirin asay neshiachal amar b'shemei tefillah. Right there, you don't have to go back because you're going to say it in Shemaya Tefillah. Then the next verse is said, Tov Lehitzki Rosh Yom Tchias HaMesim, Machzirin Oisei. Again, presumably to Ber Tchias HaMesim, She'el Berachas Hashanim, Machzirin Oisei. And She'el Berachas Hashanim, you also have to machzir him. To where the presumption was Baruch Aleinu. And now what Tess is explaining is that when it says Machzirin Oisei, it doesn't necessarily mean Baruch Aleinu. It depends what the situation was, right? If you remember before Shemaya Tefillah, say it in Shemaya Tefillah. If you remember after Shemaya Tefillah, then we don't make you go back to Baruch Aleinu, we make you go back to Shemaya Tefillah. So long as you didn't yet be argue your feet. If you argue your feet, that's when we said you would have to go back. So this is the top Tosfos, and the reason that Tosfos is saying this is because of the next Gemara, which the Gemara has further elaboration on this idea. Says the Gemara, and we'll come back. Amar Rav Tanchum, Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rav Shimon Levi. So Rav Tanchum says the name of Rav Asi and Rav Shimon Levi. Right, the last time we brought him over here, right, we're being mamshach from the same thing, Rav Tanchum and Rav Asi, but there it didn't say Rav Shimon Levi. Now it's saying from Rav Shimon Levi. So what did he say? If somebody forgot to say Yalav Yava in Ritzei, so he has to go back to Ritzei. Nisker Bahida, if you remember during Maidim, he has to go back to Ritzei. Besim Shalom, right? He already said right? He already said the Haida, so now he's in Sim Shalom. So Halachas Chayz Lavai has to go back to Ritzei. V'im Siyim Chayz Rosh. And if you forget the Shmanesh, then it has to go back. Amar Papa Radio of Achabar Ada. Had Amarin, this that we said Siyim Chayz Rosh, that the person finished Shmanesrei, he has to go back to the beginning. Loi Amarin El Sha'akar Ragla. That's the one where he took 3 steps back. Avaloi Akar Ragla, but if he didn't yet take 3 steps back, Chayz Lavai, then he could go back to Ritzei. So they asked him, Amar Le Mino Locha, how do you know this? They asked Rav Papa Radio of Achabar Ada. So he said, Amar Le Abi Mari. He says, Rav Papa says, I heard it from Rav Achabar Ada. And Abamari Shmir Amalek Abamari Shmir that when it comes to Rosh Chodesh, you forget Yav you go back to Ritzei. So long as you didn't yet take 3 steps back. Once you take 3 steps back, then you have to go back to the beginning. Rav Nachman Yitzchak then comes to clarify Hadam Mar Akaragel Chazal Rosh. This though he said when someone takes 3 steps back, they have to go back to the beginning of Shemon Esrei. That's the only situation where somebody does not normally say Tachanun after Shemon Esrei. But someone normally does say Tachanun after Shemon Esrei. Then he can go back to Ritzei because it's like he's still dominant. There are those that have a different understanding of what Rav Nachman Yitzchak said. This that we said, this that a person doesn't take 3 steps back, he goes back to Ritzei. That's only in a situation where a person normally says Tachanunim after his tefillah. So if he hasn't yet taken 3 steps back, and he normally says Tachanunim after Shemona Esrei, so then he's able to go back just to Ritzei. But if he doesn't normally say Tachanunim after his tefillah, so then even if he didn't take 3 steps back, so Chayz L'Rosh, he would still have to go back to the beginning of Shemona Esrei. A whole series of potential opinions here that we have. The short of it is as follows. The Taisus brings down as follows. Taisus says that again back to the top Taisus over here about Had Idkar Bata Shmei Tefillah. So the long Taisus says that a couple of points. Number one, Taisus points out that the Yerushalmi argues in Agamar, Miu Yerushalmi Paul Agamar Didan about Gvuras Keshamin, because the Yerushalmi says that if somebody forgot Mashav Ruach Mornei Geshem, Well, here we learned the Hachitani Leiske Geresh Sham Machzir, and I assume that means you have to go back to Mashav Arach, you have to go back to Tchias HaMesim. And Veloy Kar Malayim Shemayat Tefillah. You don't have an option to say it during Shemayat Tefillah. And the Yerushalmi says no. The Yerushalmi says if a person didn't say the same Talamat Levracha during Baruch Aleinu, then you say it during Shemayat Tefillah. If I forgot to say Mashav Baruch Mordei Geshem, he could say it in Shemayat Tefillah. And the Yerushalmi gives you a good logic. Just like she'ela, right? Asking for rain, which is asking the Ben Shalom for something, we have no problem saying in Shemaya Tefillah. So when you say Mashav which is just Haskara Shemarviach, it's just remembrance. You're not asking the Ben Shalom for anything when you say Mashav So like Kolshkin, so then for sure, shouldn't you say? Mashav Aruach in Shemayat Tefillah, and you don't have to go back to Tchias HaMesim. Alma de Behedya Isa Hasam L'Chayzer Gvurus Kashon L'Shemayat Tefillah. What it means there, Chayzer, doesn't mean you go back to Tchias HaMesim. It means you go back to Shemayat Tefillah. So Taisus then says the Ve'ef Shaliyah Shegemor Shalon Lechoshu Lefarshim Mishum Hakal V'Choymer Kedisi B'Shalmi. So Taisus says maybe the Bavli doesn't really argue in the Shalom. Maybe the Bavli agrees and would allow this. And just didn't think that you had to explain it because it was so simple. And this that it says that if a person didn't remember to say Mashiach Barach, he goes back. I mean, somebody forgot even to say by Shemayat Tefillah. So that's how Tyson suggests maybe that's how we should read it. Pavli. Tyson doesn't like it. Tyson says, "Damaskana muki remember meniska Shemayat Tefillah." So he says it doesn't really work because the way this brisa seems to be working is by somebody who remembers before Shemayat Tefillah, and because we had a question about She'ela, so a person who remembers before Shemayat Tefillah, so we said that they could say it in Shemayat Tefillah, and the Yerushalmi is clear that that goes for Saint Talamat Levracha, and that goes for Mashav Aruach, and the Bavli doesn't seem. Tesis wants to say it doesn't seem as clear to do so. Then Taisus points out, continuing on in this big Taisus, Taisus then points out that maybe there's a difference. Um, versus somebody who doesn't say anything at all. Maybe there's a difference between those two. And in fact, Taisus does do that. Taisus says that v'chein halacha l'ma'isa she'im oimei b'shel tau v'hisker shel geshem the machzirin oisei v'im lo hisker mishneim klal im machzirin oisei. Taisus says that if somebody was saying tau, um, and of saying that he said Mashav Barach, we would make him go back. But if he didn't say anything, then maybe we wouldn't make him go back. And Lamaisa, the way Taisus wants to conclude, when you hear the pshita im hisker shneim the im machzirin oisei, then lo hisker klal pshita the machzirin oisei. And if someone didn't mention anything at all, that we would make them go back. Elvad yesh lefarish had the itker tal had lo itker klal loy tar v'loy mater l'figach machzirin oisei alom hisker tal af v'mos hageshamim ein machzirin oisei. Lakach yesh b'nei adam she'ayim kol shah tal mitoch she'em regilim im heim b'mos hageshamim im shachim ar hagesh im machzirin oisei. This becomes now the meaning of the Nisel Sfard. Now you always say Mashav Aruach and Marid Atal throughout the summer, and then what it comes out is that even during the winter, when a person forgets to say Mashav Aruach and Marid Ageshem, but they are by definition going to be saying Mashav Baruch and Moratal, so then they for sure never have to go back. There's no question if you have to go back to Shemayat Tefillah or go back to Tchias HaMesim, you're always fine. So, like many other minhagim that get started because it is convenience, right? This minig of saying Mashav Baruch and Moratal, Taisus is saying, was started because we paskin that if somebody at least said Mashav Baruch and Moratal, he doesn't have to go back. And therefore, it is meaning now of the Nusach Sfard to always say Mashav Baruch Maratal, even the whole year, even in the summer. So therefore, that means that in the winter, even if you didn't say Mashav Baruch Marageshem, you would have said that. So you don't have to go back, and therefore you don't have any question about saying it Shemayat Tefillah or saying it Tchias HaMesim. That is One point of Taisus. Second point, the second Taisus on the page, Tov Hiskir. Taisus quotes, if you forgot the saying Yal V'Yavai during the Ritzei, so you should go back to Ritzei. Taisus says, "Ubalachas Gedolos Pirish." The Bahag explains that this is Dafka and a Yachid. Aval B'Tzibur Eino Chayzer. But if you are davening with a minion, you do not have to go back. Mibnei Shemei Mashiach Tzibur, because you're going to hear the Shemana Esrei again from the Tzibur. Normally, you daven the Shemana Esrei. Nowadays, you don't have to rely on the Shliach Tzibur Shemana Esrei. But in this Shemana Esrei, since you're going to be needing the Shliach Tzibur for being Yaitza the Shemana Esrei, because you're relying on his Yalvi Yavai, so you have to medactic every word of the Shemana Esrei of the Shliach Tzibur, Af B'Shu Baki, even though you're a big expert. The Ha'amina Rosh Hashanah, this that we say, Kashem Shemaitzi Yesh in a Baki, Kach Maitzi Baki. This that we say that a person is able, the Shliach Tzibur is able to Maitzi even a Baki. Nevertheless, as Rabbi Gamliel, we learned already before, Rabbi Gamliel was not matir people to not say Shemana Esrei unless they were workers in the field. Elam Shebesadas. But the regular person, everybody has to say Shemana Esrei. You cannot rely on the Shliach Tzibur, and so therefore, as a result of that, the halacha would be that yesh lema hadam shlo yitzbal klal avahech yitzbal kvar lecha shvinon like ilu yitzbal klal vahu adin lakol davar shemachzirin oisei yihadar shama lem mishlech tzibur mirash v'atzeif nothing. So Tosfos concludes that so long as a person hears whatever it was that they forgot from the shliach tzibur and they have kavana, then they will be yaitza. And that means that a person does not need to repeat. And then quotes Rabbi Meir Pasach Dafka Shachach Lahaska Shorosh Chodesh Aval Shachach Bracha Shlema. That's only in relation to Yal V'Yavai. So then potentially again we're being more limited as to what one goes back for. Aval Bracha Shlema. If someone forgot a whole bracha in the Shemona Esrei, Machzimin Osev Any Yitzim Mishmios Shliach Tzibur, and he will not be yetz with his shmir of the Shliach Tzibur. That's how Tosfos concludes. So again, we have now two potential solutions in these Tosfos for not having to go back. Number one, if a person says Mashav Rachman Atal the whole year, he doesn't have to go back in the winter when he forgets Mashav Rachman Geshem. We have the Rishalma that says even if a person doesn't say Mashav Rachman Atal throughout the year, and now in the winter he forgot Mashav Rachman Geshem, and he remembered before Shemay Tefillah, he should be able to say it in Shemay Tefillah. And we have Tosfos that says that if a person forgot after Shemay Tefillah, but he remembered prior to being Eiker Raglov, so then he could say he can go back to Shemay Tefillah and say the same Talmud. If a person forgot Yal V'Yavai, and he remembers before he's Eiker Raglov, he goes back to the Avodah. But if he's davening with a tzibur, there is the ability to make all this going back, and that is provided that he's listening to the shliach tzibur ois v'ois. But if he is in a situation where he's davening to the yachid, then of course he has to go back. And the one thing to just note is that if a person forgot an actual bracha, but it's something bigger than that, then go back to the point of Rabbi Gamliel. If they only you have to rely on shliach tzibur for something like the full Shemona Esrei is only workers and the like, but a regular person who's not an Einus or a Tarid, he should boast to daven the whole Shemona Esrei for himself. There are two opinions on understanding what Rav Nachman was saying in terms of being Eiker Raglov. So at the bottom, Tosfos says that the Rif Paskins, like the Iked Amri, that if a person is saying Tachanunim normally and he did not yet take his 3 steps back, then he does not have to go back. He's still considered as though he's still davening Shemona Esrei. But if he's not ragel to say Tachanunim, then even if he didn't yet take the 3 steps back, it's already considered like he already finished Shemona Esrei. And therefore, he would have to go back. And if he took 3 steps back, even if he normally does say Tachanunim, so then he has to go back. So now again, we say Yehil Ratzon Me'afid 2 times, one before the kindness, one afterwards. So this becomes now a question of what does it mean Tachanunim? Is there Tachanunim Elakayin Tsar? Then we're all regular to say Tachanunim. So what do we mean when we say Mehil Ratzon Mefi? Is that the first Yehil Ratzon or is the second Yehil Ratzon? And this becomes a bit of a question because we know that after you say the first Yehil Ratzon, you're able to now be mafsik and the Shemon Esrei to say various things, Amen, etc. You're able to be mafsik. It's not like considered fully Shemon Esrei. So do you say it's not considered fully Shemon Esrei now that you have to be Chayzer L'Rosh, even though you're not yet Eiker Ragel and you learn Ragel Learn Tachanunin? So this is not 100% so clear. Do we, or is it this? Is it after the second year, the Ratzon and Mefi, that's when we considered you're done, even if you're not yet Iker Raglav, and then at that point you would go back. What is the Tachanunim? Does that mean Tachanunim after Shemona Esrei? Like it's fully done, then people said Tachanunim? Because we burn the Tachanunim that all these different people would they would finish the davening. The Gemara told us they had. I'm sorry, it was Tez Zayin. The Gemara said, Rabbi Chia Basar Dematzli Amar Hachi, Rav Basar Tzlusei Amar Hachi, Rabbi Basar Tzlusei Amar Hachi. This was these all these different opinions, which we ended up getting all the kind of stuff from was after they finished davening. What does it mean after they finished davening? That's the first Gila Ratzin, or is it the second? Did these things become like a tefillah arichta that now they became part of tefillah from the fact that we say it? If that's the case, then maybe you should understand it's the second Gila Ratzin. The first Gila Ratzin is still a shred enough that that would be considered a situation where you go back to Ritzay. All of this and more is discussed. We don't have time to go further into it. Continues the Gemara. And the Gemara says, keva. Somebody makes his tefillah into something routine. What does it mean? My keva, Rav Yaakov Bar Idi. So the first opinion, what it means is Rav Yaakov Bar Idi, Rav Aisha, Kol Tefillasai, Doim Alav Kemasui. What does it mean? A person not supposed to make his tefillah keva, and if he does, it's not going to be a tachanun, it's not going to be working for him. That's if somebody makes it feel like a masay. It's a burden. It's very hard for him to do it. Ugh, I have to go daven. Chayk kavua, says Rashi. Chayk kavua alayla ispal v'tzarach ani latzesi dechavas. I have to, heed and do all of my obligations, but I'm not really excited, not really interested in doing it. That is one opinion of what it means. The second opinion says the Gemara. For Rabbanan Amri Kol Mi She'enoi Aimra B'Lashon Tachanunim. Somebody's not davening with a Lashon Tachanunim. He's not davening in a heartziger fashion. Rabba of Rav Yosef Damri Tarvai. Rabba and Rav Yosef said together, Kol She'eni Yochel Achadish Ba'Davar. Somebody's not able to mechadish something in the tefillah. What does it mean? That he's not able to mechadish something in the davening. So the Rashi explains, the Vakasha also when he's asking the Rebbeinu Shalom for things, he's not asking for anything unique. Say he needs today. I know Lashon Kavak, Yem Kain Esmo, Kain Macha, like yesterday, like today, like tomorrow. Person's supposed to be mechadish something in the field. Not every day. Doesn't mean that, this is not considered to be a chiddush. Obviously, somebody needs to refer Shem for the same thing every day. That's not a vort. But people have different needs that come up. People have different needs that come up on a daily, so a weekly basis. Certainly, people have different things that come up, and you're supposed to be down to Ben Shalom. Certainly doing Shemay Tefillah, but each bracha relevant to it. The things that are relevant to you. That's what makes the tefillah into bakash. That's what makes the tefillah being tachanunim. So if somebody's not being mechadish, so it's a little bit different than what we said about who's making tefillah to tachanunim. It's not a question of chiddush. It's a question of hartzig. Rabbi Rav Yosef are saying you have to make some sort of a chiddush. You have to think of something new. You have to come up with something that he didn't say every day. Yeah, something unique. I should just point out the bottom tesis that we didn't do. The bottom tesis says so Tesis explains that the Rabbeinu Hananel said that if somebody's able this opinion says if somebody's able to make it tefillah to tachanunim, and even if it's a burden for him, but he's able to sort of kvetch epis and make it bakasha, so that's still considered the tefillah ma'aliyah. The issue was that the type of tefillah, even if it's a masoi. But you did it with a right kind of a bakasha dikatone, so that still is going to be sufficient. That's still going to work. Also, you should note that the Rabbeinu Hananel pointed out one thing that I should have mentioned in the previous Gemara that I forgot to, is that the Rabbeinu Hananel adds in that what it sounds like is if a person is davening with a tzibur, And the tzibur's got to wait for him to daven, so then he shouldn't be matriach tzibur and make them wait to daven a second time. So a second reason why a person, in other words, it's not just relying on the tzibur, but also a person can be giving a tircha to tzibur. Let's say the person's a rabbi of the congregation, or they otherwise wait for him. So that'll be another reason not to daven again and to rely on the shliach tzibur. Okay, just to mention, Rabbi Rav Yosef, Dami Tarvai, Rabbi Rav Yosef is saying together. We find this common many times in Shas. We see Rabbi and Rav Yosef saying things together. It's a fascinating thing because the Gemara in Harish Yudal tells us that Rabbi was supposed to become the Rosh Shiva because he was the Sinai, and Rabbi Yosef was supposed to become the Rosh Shiva because he was the Sinai, and Rabbi was the Iker Harim. And they got an answer from Eretz Yisrael that said that Rabbi Yosef therefore was more needed. But Rav Yosef refused to take the job, and Rabbi took the job until he died. Rav Yosef was not taking any of the honors that were given to the Rosh Shiva because he didn't want to be in any way touching on Rabbi's covet. The whole Gemara about how Rabbi passed away, all interesting Gemara in the Bava Metzia paid hay, very fascinating Gemara, but not for now. But nevertheless, they see how wonderful they got along. They said on certain things, they said together they agreed on certain things. Okay, continues the Gemara. Amar Rav Zera, I know Yechilna Chalushi Bamilsa Mustafina Dilma Matridna. He said, Rabbi Zera says I'm able to mechadish things, but I'm afraid to because if I'm going to be focusing on the chiddush and doing new things, there's a decent possibility that I'm going to forget where I am, and then it'll be a question about where I come back to. So that's Rav Zera. So it sounds like he doesn't agree with the idea that he's supposed to be mechadish because he's afraid of what it will do to his mind. Abaya Bar Oven, Rabbi Chini Bar Oven, right? We meet these people in Megillah Zion, these very, 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 very poor brothers. They were Mechalfis Udesayu, they were coming out to Purim. They would eat each other's meals in order to Mekayim Sudat Purim and also Mishlach Manas. That's how poor they were. So Abaya Bar Oven, Chini Bar Oven, Amar Tavai, they also they're brothers, and they also agree on what it means to make your tefillah like tefillas kava. It's called she'en mispam l'dumei chama. Anybody who doesn't daven with them doing chama. What does it mean? Amar Rav Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yechanan. Mitzvah l'spam l'dumei chama. It's a mitzvah to daven l'dumei chama. So somebody who's not davening in the dumei chama, in their mind, that's not a tefillah. That's making a tefillah into a tefillah like kava. What's the dumei chama? Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Zeh, my car, Yeruchim Shem, Shabnei Yareach Darim. So the person should daven with the sun, meaning in the morning with nates, and with ne'erech, before the moon, darim, he's going to daven as well the mincha prayer. So in other words, according to Abai Bar Oven and Chani Bar Oven, somebody's making a tefillah like keva, somebody's not davening doing chama. Somebody's davening some other point that's appropriate for themselves, but not doing it at the best possible moments. So such a person is making a tefillah keva. Problem with this is the Gemara says, why? By the time Adilma Mitrafil is Shaita, because maybe the hour will go, maybe it'll be a situation where the time is gone, and all of a sudden it's too late to daven mincha anymore, because davening when the sun is setting is taking a risk that maybe you're going to end up being too late. I should point out that this idea of davening and doing chama, we also had it on Testament base to daven with mincha t'shkia, but it's very interesting because the Gemara tells us that Avram Avinu, brought in Yom Chavches, Avram Avinu was mispal mechim shachrei koslei, when the walls would start to get a little darker. In other words, in the seventh hour, right after the noon. That is to say, according to the Gemara there, Avram Avinu, as Rashi explains, he's not davening shachris then. He didn't daven late shachris. He's davening mincha then, and his mincha was very early in the day. So he didn't daven him do mechama. So the question would be, what is sort of the ideal? What about us? Bizman hazeh, there are many, including my shul, where we daven mincha ma'ariv together, right before and after shkia. And so that is davening the mechama. You're davening with the setting of the sun. But then they curse you out in the west. They're not supposed to be municipal the mechama. It's very nice that Rebbe and Bar Oven want to say that you're not making tefillas a keva, but in the West, in the Eretz Yisrael, they curse those that did daven in the Duchano. Yet we do. The reason we do is because by us it's regular in the calendar. We have watches. It's not like we're going to lose the time or forget what time it is. Okay, continues the word. Somebody who's going in a dangerous veg, somebody who's going in a dangerous place, he should say it's feel like a What should he say? B'chol parasha se'ibor. We don't know what that means. So says the Gemara, what does it mean? B'chol parasha se'ibor. So the Gemara explains that as follows: My person, that we ask the Rebbeinu Shalom when somebody's going in a dangerous place. You say, "Rebbeinu Shalom, it's very complicated. So you call Tzarchem Lefanacha, all of our needs should be before you. You get army of Ukva, another version of what Chizan and Ukva. I feel Shahim Torah. Even if the moment is where the Jewish people are violating the Torah law, nevertheless you call Tzarchem Lefanacha, all of their needs should be before you. So again, if somebody is going in a makom sakana, he should daven a short tefillah, as we will see. We're going to be getting to tefillah sadarach. Somebody's in a place of gedudei chayav listim when there's wild animals or robbers. You should say tefillah katsara. How is that different than we just said? Shurim amalch makom sakana spelled tefillah katsara. Doesn't seem fundamentally different. Maybe over here we don't know that's a makom sakana. Maybe over here it's mehalach, and there could be chayes, there could be listim. But it's not mamish sakana. And immediately, nevertheless, you still say it's tefillah katsar. What is this tefillah katsar? Vezu tefillah katsar. It's a bit of a different version of what we just said. But right? Hashem, you should do your will in heaven. We say nachas ruach le're'echa mitachas. V'atay b'einecha asay. Baruch Hashem shemei tefillah. And whatever the Rebbeinu Shalom does what he does in heavens, and he should give a nachas ruach to those that fear him from below. Baruch Hashem shemei tefillah. Shomei shavas amcha Yisrael. You should hear the cries of your people. V'asem her bakashosam. You should do their will. You should do what they're asking for. Baruch Hashem shemei tefillah. Those are tzaddik omer. Shoma tzakas amcha Yisrael. V'asem her bakashosam. Baruch Hashem shemei tefillah. Again, the same idea. Hear the cries of the Jewish people and do their will quickly. Again, the same idea. No, the needs of the Jews are a lot. They don't have a lot of time to focus. Give each person a parnasa. And each living being should get what they need to be able to stand. So, we pass like Achayim is what I find. Right? He said to Rabbi Yehuda, the brother of Salah Chasida, like Tirtach. Right, but like tachdi, right? A person shouldn't, sort of get angry, and they will not sin. Right? What is the basic idea when a person, in fact, does get angry? A person has the potentially the tendency. A person has the tendency to, forget who they're standing before. They could potentially, sin. Like Tarvi like Tachti, right? A person shouldn't get drunk. Sounds like he should choose his creator and go. What does it mean? Imach b'kanech l'tzei. Says the Gemara, Ma imach b'kanech l'tzei. Amar Yaakov, Amar Chisda, Zut Tfilas Haderech. This is Tfilas Haderech. So now we're saying it's not a situation of Makom do the Chaya, the listed, etc. It's just simply a situation where someone is going on the road. Going on the road obviously could have a situation where there could be danger, but it's not guaranteed that there's going to be danger. And so what we're saying is that a person should take a shus from the Rebbeinu Shalom. He should say Tfilas Haderech. My Tfilas Haderech says to me, Ratzon Fanech Hashem Lekeinu Shetelechem L'Shalom Tzatzidin Shalom Tzatzidin Shalom Tzatzidin Kaf Kolev Erev Derech. Shish L'Baruch Masi Yada Nein L'Chen L'Ches V'Rakim L'Nechem L'Nechem L'Yah Baruch Hashem Shemei Tfilah. And we'll have to conclude over here. Have a wonderful day.